Mario Kart 64 sure is one magical game. Not only does it have some of the best multiplayer modes in all of gaming, but the tracks here are some of the best in the entire series. And while most of them are pretty simple, there are a handful that can be a bit too challenging at times. So that's why today, I'll be ranking the top 10 hardest Mario Kart 64 tracks. This list is based on how difficult the layout for each track is, as well as what obstacles are present on each course. And real quick, make sure to subscribe so that you can stay up to date on all of my videos. Now then, rev up those engines and let's get to the countdown! Number 10. Choco Mountain. Now I don't know about you, but I've never seen any mountains that look like this before. Is it because they're made out of chocolate? I don't know, but this track certainly has its challenges. The track itself is very narrow, and running into the walls can bring you to a halt. It's not so bad if you know where you're going, but that doesn't make it any less annoying. There's also some boulders that can fall onto the track near the end. They may look easy to dodge at first, but they fall much faster than you'd expect, and can easily end up costing you the race. And it doesn't help that right after that, there's a ledge that you can fall off of that takes you onto an earlier part of the track. Granted, it isn't too far away, but if you fall off, be prepared to waste a lot of time as you slowly turn around. Like seriously, they could not have made this more annoying. While there are a lot of obstacles on Choco Mountain, I've never found this one to be too hard. As long as you take your turns carefully and watch out for the hazards, this one really isn't too bad. Number 9. Frappe Snowland. Here's one I don't see too many people talk about when discussing difficult Mario Kart tracks. I mean, at first glance, this looks like your typical snow-themed track, but then you get to the part with all the snowmen and it's just all over. The middle of the track is littered with rogue snowmen who just want to ruin your day. Running into them will send your character flying, and it wastes so much time before you're able to start accelerating again. It can be really tedious to dodge them all, but with enough practice, it isn't too bad. Aside from that, there really isn't too much going on. There are a few spots where you can fall off, but it's pretty unlikely that it'll be a threat to your race. The only other thing I can think of is that some of the turns are a little tight, but they're really not that bad. Overall, this is a track with a fair amount of challenges, but none that are too crazy to overcome. Number 8. DK's Jungle Parkway. And now we're in the jungle from Donkey Kong Country. Okay, not really, but it certainly looks like it. This is one of those tracks that doesn't have anything particularly challenging about it, but can still prove to be difficult at times. The main thing I have trouble with on this course is the sharp turns. Not all of them are bad, but some can be a little tricky to pull off. And it doesn't help that there are monkeys throwing coconuts at you during the race. If you go off course during the jungle part of the track, coconuts will be flung at your vehicle and push you back onto the path. Honestly, I think this makes the track a lot easier, but I can definitely understand how this might throw some people off. And who's even throwing the coconuts anyway? Diddy Kong? Donkey Kong? Curious George? The only other thing I have to say about this track is that there are a few spots where you can fall into the water, but as long as you're careful, it shouldn't be an issue. DK Jungle Parkway can take some time to get used to, but it's child's play compared to what's coming up. Number 7. Sherbert Land. Why did they name it Sherbert Land, you might ask? I don't know, there's no sherbet here as far as I can tell, but I can without a doubt say that this is the hardest level yet on this list. To start, the track's covered in ice, so you know what that means. Ice physics! The whole time you're on this track, you feel like you have little to no control over your character's movement. Everything just feels so slippery and makes it really hard to dodge all the obstacles along the way. And that brings me to my other point. Those stupid, no-good, dumbass penguins are always getting in the way. If you thought the baby penguin was annoying in Mario 64, well, these are even worse. Everywhere you go on this track, there's penguins, and I guarantee you that you will run into them because they're constantly sliding around in unpredictable ways. Not even the cave is safe from them, as there's penguins in there too. And it can be especially hard to see them past the pillars, and it just gets to be too much. The awful physics and constantly moving obstacles definitely don't match, and really make for a frustrating experience. Number 6. Rainbow Road. I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for this one. Okay, so I've made it clear in the past that Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road is far from my favorite Rainbow Road track, and I'm not exactly sure what the general consensus is about this track's difficulty, but in my opinion, I don't think this one's too difficult. To me, the only real obstacles are the chain chomps that travel throughout the course. They move at pretty weird angles and can waste a lot of time if you get hit by one, but other than that, there really isn't a whole lot going on. I've seen some people complain that they have trouble getting back in first after falling behind, but that's never really been an issue for me. Sure, the red shells don't really work work here, but every other item works perfectly fine on this track, so it really isn't that bad. I almost wish that Nintendo put more obstacles on the track to keep it more interesting, because as it stands, this track just isn't as challenging as some people make it out to be. In fact, I think the real challenge is not falling asleep, because this track takes forever to complete. Oh, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for that one. Number 5. Wario Stadium. This is the only track from Mario Kart 64 that hasn't been brought back as a retro track in future games. And that's a real shame because this track has always been one of my favorites. But that's still not enough to excuse it from being on this list. Aside from the fact that the track's longer than Jupiter, it has a lot of really sharp turns that can be quite difficult to maneuver correctly. Like seriously, some of these turns are just impossible to make without crashing into a wall. Especially that one at the end. Ugh, I hate you. And then there's the fact that the road is bumpy as can be. The whole track just has so many bumps and hills that it can be really hard to control your vehicle. Sure, there are some parts where the road smooths out, but it's still annoying to deal with. But of course, I saved the hardest part for last. The big jump. Now you might look at this jump and think, that doesn't look too bad, but that's because it's meant to deceive you, because if you get hit by anything right before you go off, you fall all the way to the bottom, and it doesn't respawn you either, which means that you have to go back and recomplete that part of the level again. And it's not like in Choco Mountain where you only have to redo a little bit of the track. No, you have to drive through like 25% of the track again, and if you fall off on the second or third lap, it's practically game over because it's very unlikely that you'll have enough time to come back. Now as long as you're careful when going over, it really isn't that bad. It might be hard, but at least this track's not as difficult as the rest of the ones on this list. Number 4. Yoshi Valley. You want to talk about something confusing? Well, look no further than Yoshi Valley. This is without a doubt one of the most complicated tracks in the entire franchise, mainly because it contains more branching paths than any other track in the entire series. And it might sound intimidating at first, but it's honestly not as bad as it sounds. So the way this course works is that you start on one giant road before it splits up into multiple different paths. All of the ways are different lengths with varying degrees of difficulty. The shorter paths are harder, and the longer paths are easier. Each way has all sorts of different obstacles, like no guardrails and these spiky guys whose name I just refuse to look up. But of course, your main enemy on this track is falling off. It takes so long to get back on the track after falling off, and why do I have to wait for my character to fall all the way to the bottom of the hill before I get picked up? Couldn't it fade to black like in the newer games? That way I wouldn't have to sit through some pointless animation and I could get back to the race? And this happens so often too, and half of the level doesn't even contain guardrails, so it's more than likely it's gonna happen to you at least once per race. Like seriously, who thought this was a good idea? Who? At least the rest of the track is pretty simple. Well, except for that egg part. That part sucks. I don't know, man. I mean, I love this track to death, but some days it proves to be way too much of a challenge. Number 3. Toad's Turnpike. You know, I've always wondered why go-karts aren't allowed on the highways, but then I played Toad's Turnpike and realized how grateful I am that traffic laws exist, because oh mama is this one a doozy. You race alongside traffic on a busy highway and have to avoid crashing into any of the vehicles, and if you do run into something, which is probably pretty likely, you have to wait a million years before you can drive again. It's not like it's impossible to not crash into anything, but I mean, come on, just look at this. And sometimes when you run into a vehicle, you aren't given nearly enough time to drive back to safety, meaning that you can continuously get run over multiple times in a row. What the hell? And I haven't even brought up the worst part yet. When you play this track in mirror mode, the cars come towards you. So now you have even less time to react to them coming at you, on top of them just being an ass. And it doesn't help that all of the item boxes are tucked away on the sides of the road. They could have at least put them somewhere that was more convenient for the player, but no. Honestly, this track is just way too difficult for my liking. I appreciate a good challenge every once in a while, but this track just took it way too far. Number 2. Banshee Boardwalk. Did you know that the dictionary term for banshee means a female spirit whose wailing warns of an impending death in a household? Great. Perfect for Mario Kart. I'll never understand why they decided to call this track what they did, but no matter what it's called, this track manages to be difficult in the most brutal ways possible. I suppose the first thing to bring up is the fact that this level is way too dark. If you're playing this game with inadequate lighting, it can be very difficult to see just where you're going because of how dark it is. I mean, there's literally bright red arrows at every turn that show you which way to go. Sure, this helps out a little bit, but this is yet another sign of infuriating level design. The other big problem I have with this stage is the lack of guardrails. Sure, there are some along the way, way, but it seems like on every tight turn, there aren't any. Like here, when the track just sorta jets out for no reason. Do you see any guardrails there to protect me? No? Exactly. It just feels like the developers chose to remove the guardrails where they knew players were going to fall off, and it's infuriating. I mean, I guess it's kind of petty to be complaining about this sort of thing, but it's just so difficult. And why are there so many bats on this course too? Did Nintendo really look at this and think this looked fun? Because it's not. Look, maybe I'm over-exaggerating a little bit. Maybe this course isn't nearly as difficult as I think it is. Maybe this course is actually really easy and my opinions are just wrong. Nah, this one sucks. Number 1. Bowser's Castle. You know, it's ironic. The track I think is hardest in this game just so happens to be my favorite. Funny how that worked out. But seriously, Bowser's Castle is without a doubt the hardest track in Mario Kart 64. No other level has more obstacles, more traps, more bullcrap, more everything. It's that hard. So first you'll drive into the castle past a large Bowser statue that spits fire at you. Then you're in this room with all these randomly moving thwomps, which are very hard to dodge. Then the next thing you know, there's thwomps following you in front, so you have to get around them while also trying to deal with the thwomps at the end of the room. And after that there's even more thwomps, and 2 narrow bridges with no guardrails, and then the track ends with you making all these jumps and going around the towers and trying not to fall. It really is a lot of fun, but damn is it challenging. There's just so much crap that you have to put up with. Like, why are there so many thwomps that you have to dodge? I love thwomps as much as the next guy, but there's only so much I can take in a single track. And the bridges over the lava are the worst. I feel like I fall off at least one of them once per race because they're just way too small. And did I mention that every turn in this castle is at a 90-degree angle? So have fun constantly crashing and losing all of your momentum because the turns in this level are pointier than the world's sharpest knife. And what's with the thwomp just chilling in jail? You know, he looks kind of angry in there. And it's probably because he knows how impossible this level really is. I feel you, buddy. I feel ya. Mario Kart 64 really is an amazing game. Even though some of the tracks can be pretty hard at times, the difficulty is what makes this game so fun. So if you enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel to see even more of my videos. And don't forget to follow me on social media as well. Links are in the description. And with that, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.